London, 1813. Miss Jane Fairchild clutched her worn woolen cloak tighter around her shoulders as she approached the imposing townhouse. The letter from Lady Harrington had been most unexpected, a request for a lady's maid to serve her niece for the season. Jane had never been to London, had never served as a lady's maid, and had certainly never expected to find herself standing before one of Mayfair's grandest residences on a crisp spring morning. But her father's death had left the family in dire circumstances. What little money remained after his gambling debts were settled barely kept her mother and younger sisters fed. This position offered not only her own survival but the means to send funds home. Jane squared her shoulders, lifted the heavy brass knocker, and let it fall against the polished door. The sound echoed her thundering heart. A stern-faced butler opened the door, regarding her with the particular brand of disdain reserved for those who approached the servant's entrance incorrectly. "I am Miss Fairchild," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Lady Harrington is expecting me." The butler's eyebrows rose a fraction. "Indeed. Follow me." Jane trailed after him through corridors adorned with paintings that likely cost more than her family's cottage. She was led to a drawing room where a regal woman sat beside the fire, her silver-streaked dark hair arranged in an elegant coiffure beneath a lace cap. "Miss Fairchild, my lady," the butler announced before withdrawing. Lady Harrington studied Jane with shrewd eyes. "You are younger than I expected." "I am 21, my lady." "And your experience as a lady's maid?" Jane hesitated. "I have dressed my sister's hair and mended fine garments. I am a quick study." Lady Harrington's lips twitched. "Honesty. How refreshing." She gestured to a chair. "Sit. Tea?" Jane perched on the edge of the seat, surprised at the invitation. "Thank you, my lady." As Lady Harrington poured, she spoke plainly. "Your father was a gentleman, was he not? Before his financial difficulties." Jane's cheeks warmed. "Yes, my lady. And you were educated accordingly." "I was fortunate in that regard." Lady Harrington nodded thoughtfully. "My niece, Lady Amelia, requires more than a maid. She needs a companion who understands proper society but will not encourage her more rebellious tendencies." She fixed Jane with a pointed stare. "You will be paid as a lady's maid but expected to provide the influence of a gentlewoman. Can you manage this delicate balance?" Jane's mind whirled. This was not what she had anticipated, yet it seemed infinitely preferable to scrubbing floors. "I believe I can, my lady." "Good. There is one other matter." Lady Harrington set down her teacup. "The season brings many notable personages to London. Among them will be Prince Sebastian of Xanthia." Jane's eyes widened. Xanthia was a small but wealthy principality on the continent. Its ruling family was known for their handsome features and less admirable temperaments. The prince has expressed interest in meeting eligible English ladies. While my niece is not actively seeking a match this season, connections with foreign royalty are never disadvantageous." "I understand, my lady." Lady Harrington's expression softened slightly. "You will have your own chamber adjacent to Lady Amelia's. Your duties begin tomorrow morning." She rang a small bell. "Mrs. Winters will show you to your quarters." As Jane followed the housekeeper upstairs, she wondered what she had entangled herself in. Lady Amelia was reportedly spirited, royalty would be present, and Jane herself was to be neither fully servant nor equal. It was a precarious position indeed. Lady Amelia proved to be everything the gossip sheet suggested: beautiful, capricious, and determined to enjoy every moment of her first season. She greeted Jane with casual friendliness that bordered on impropriety. "Oh, thank heavens you're not ancient like Mamma's last choice," she declared, circling Jane with undisguised curiosity. "And you're pretty too." "How marvelous. We shall be great friends, I think." Jane offered a curtsy. "I am pleased to serve you, Lady Amelia." "None of that's Lady Amelia a nonsense when we're alone. I'm simply Amelia to my friends." She flopped onto a silk-covered settee. "Tell me, Jane, I may call you Jane, meant I, have you ever been to a grand ball? I have attended country assemblies, Jane replied carefully. Amelia clapped her hands. Perfect. Then you understand the fundamentals. You must help me practice my dancing. The Ravenscroft ball is in a fortnight, and everyone who matters will attend. Including, Jane suspected, a certain foreign prince. The following days established a routine. Jane rose early to prepare Amelia's clothing, arranged her hair with increasing skill, and accompanied her on morning calls and afternoon promenades through Hyde Park. In the evenings, she helped Amelia prepare for smaller gatherings, then waited up to assist her undressing upon return. It was during these quiet evening moments that Jane caught glimpses of the insecurity beneath Amelia's confident exterior. "Do you think I laughed too loudly at Lord Pembroke's jest?" Amelia would ask, or was my dance with Mr. Hamilton too spirited? Jane offered reassurance and gentle guidance, drawing on half-remembered lessons from her own brief entry into society before her father's downfall. One evening, as Jane unpinned Amelia's elaborate curls, her charge spoke softly. "Prince Sebastian was at Lady Carlton's musicale tonight." Jane's fingers stilled momentarily. "Was he, indeed?" "He's terribly handsome," Amelia sighed. "But so intimidating. He hardly smiled the entire evening, just watched everyone with those dark eyes." "Perhaps he was merely observing English customs," Jane suggested. Amelia shook her head slightly. "No, there was something calculating in his gaze. When he was introduced to me, he barely acknowledged my curtsy before turning to Penelope Ashton." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They say he's seeking a bride, but one with impeccable bloodlines and a substantial dowry." Jane resumed brushing Amelia's hair. "Your lineage is beyond reproach, and your dowry considerable. But I'm not. I don't know how to capture a prince's attention." Amelia twisted to face Jane. "You must help me. Aunt says you understand society. Teach me to be the sort of lady a prince would notice." Jane felt a flutter of unease. "I'm not certain, please, Jane." Amelia clasped her hands. "The Ravenscroft ball approaches, and everyone says Prince Sebastian never misses Lord Ravenscroft's gatherings." Against her better judgment, Jane nodded. "I will do what I can." The night of the Ravenscroft ball arrived with a flurry of excitement. Jane had spent hours arranging Amelia's golden hair into an intricate style adorned with pearl pins. Her gown of pale blue silk complemented her fair coloring perfectly. "You look beautiful," Jane said truthfully as she fastened the last hook. Amelia twirled before the mirror. "Do you truly think so? Will he notice me?" Before Jane could respond, Lady Harrington swept into the room. "Amelia, the carriage awaits." She assessed her niece with approval. "Well done, Miss Fairchild. You have exceeded expectations." As they prepared to depart, Lady Harrington turned to Jane. "You will accompany us. Lady Ravenscroft is short-staffed, and I've offered your services to assist the maids attending to the ladies' retiring room." Jane curtsied, surprised and somewhat dismayed. She had not anticipated being present at such a gathering, even in a servant's capacity. The prospect of witnessing the glittering world she once briefly inhabited, now from its shadows, brought a sharp pang she hadn't expected. Lord Ravenscroft's ballroom blazed with hundreds of candles. Elaborate floral arrangement scented the air, and the orchestra played a lively country dance as Jane slipped through a side entrance. In the ladies' retiring room, she helped straighten trains, secured loose hairpins, and offered cool cloths to overheated dancers. It was during a rare quiet moment that Jane heard the first whispers about Prince Sebastian Xanthoff. "Did you see how he dismissed Lady Wilton's daughter?" a young woman murmured to her companion. Barely acknowledged her introduction before walking away. "They say he finds English manners provincial," her friend replied. Clara Henshaw heard him tell Lord Pemberton that English ladies dance like wooden dolls. Jane frowned at such rudeness. Royalty or not, there was no excuse for poor manners. As the evening progressed, Jane occasionally glimpsed the infamous prince through the open doorway. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and striking features, he cut an imposing figure in his immaculate evening attire. Yet his expression remained coolly detached as he surveyed the assemblage, as though finding everyone present somewhat lacking. A commotion in the retiring room drew Jane's attention. Amelia rushed in, cheeks flushed and eyes suspiciously bright. "Jane, I need air," she whispered urgently. "Help me, please." Jane guided her to a quiet corner. "What happened?" "Prince Sebastian." Amelia's voice caught. "He asked me to dance the quadrille, and I was so nervous I tripped over his foot. Then when he asked about my interests, I couldn't think of anything intelligent to say." She pressed her handkerchief to her eyes. "He looked so bored, and when the dance ended, he merely nodded and walked away without a word." Jane patted her hand sympathetically. "Many gentlemen are not skilled conversationalists. The fault may not be yours." "But it was." Amelia insisted. "And now I shall never capture his attention." "Perhaps that's for the best," Jane suggested gently. "A man who cannot be gracious when a lady is nervous may not be worth pursuing." Amelia looked scandalized. "He's a prince, Jane." "Even princes should show good manners," Jane replied, then immediately regretted her forthright tone. "Forgive me. It's not my place, Miss Fairchild." Jane turned to find Lady Harrington standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "You are needed in the ballroom. Follow me." Confused, Jane cast an apologetic glance at Amelia before following Lady Harrington through the crowded corridors. To her surprise, they approached a small gathering that included their host, Lord Ravenscroft, and several distinguished-looking gentlemen. Among them stood Prince Sebastian Xantoff. Up close, the prince was even more handsome, with sharp cheekbones and eyes the color of dark amber. Those eyes now fixed on Jane with unsettling intensity. "Your Highness, may I present Miss Fairchild?" Lord Ravenscroft said. "She is Lady Harrington's companion." Jane dropped into a deep curtsy, her mind racing. Why was she being introduced to the prince? And why had Lord Ravenscroft hesitated over her position? "Miss Fairchild," the prince said, his voice deep and accented. "Lord Ravenscroft informs me you once moved in society circles." Jane felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I had that privilege briefly, Your Highness." A smile that held no warmth curved the prince's lips. "Then you must know our dances well." "I?" Jane glanced at Lady Harrington, whose expression remained impassive. "I learned the basics, Your Highness." "Excellent." The prince turned to Lord Ravenscroft. "You see? I have found my partner for the demonstration." "Demonstration?" Jane's confusion must have shown on her face, for Lord Ravenscroft cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Your Highness expressed interest in seeing the Alaman performed properly," he explained. "As our planned demonstration couple has encountered difficulties, we find ourselves in need of a replacement." And naturally, the prince added with that same cold smile, "A lady's maid with pretensions to gentility should provide ample amusement." Jane froze, the insult washing over her like ice water. He intended to embarrass her, to make sport of her fallen circumstances for the entertainment of the ton. Her gaze flickered to Lady Harrington, whose slight frown suggested this had not been her idea. Pride warred with practicality in Jane's breast. To refuse would cost her position. To accept meant public humiliation. The prince extended his hand, challenge glinting in his eyes. "Unless, perhaps, you find yourself incapable after all." Something in his smug certainty sparked a fire in Jane's heart. Before she could reconsider, she placed her hand in his. "I should be honored to assist Your Highness," she replied, her voice steady. Lord Ravenscroft looked relieved. "Splendid. We shall clear the floor after the current set concludes." As they waited, Prince Sebastian leaned closer. "Tell me, Miss Fairchild, how does a gentleman's daughter come to serve as a lady's maid?" "The same way a prince comes to mock those beneath him, I imagine," Jane replied softly. "Through circumstances beyond her control." His eyebrows rose, surprise briefly replacing his disdain. You speak boldly for one in your position. You have already determined to humiliate me, your highness. What more have I to lose? For a moment, something like respect flickered in his eyes. Then the music ended, and Lord Ravenscroft's voice rang out, announcing the special demonstration of the amusement by His Highness Prince Sebastian of Xanthia and Miss Jane Fairchild. Whispers rippled through the ballroom as Jane took her place opposite the prince. She was acutely aware of her simple black dress, serviceable for a lady's maid but woefully inadequate for a ballroom. Several young ladies tittered behind their fans, and Jane caught Amelia's wide-eyed stare from across the room. As the orchestra struck the first notes, Jane took a deep breath and called upon every lesson her dancing master had drilled into her before her father's ruin. The amusement was a stately German dance requiring precise footwork and elegant carriage, a dance she had once excelled at during happier times. Prince Sebastian executed the opening bow with cold formality. Jane matched his movements with a graceful curtsy, keeping her back straight and her chin lifted. As they moved into the first figure, she focused solely on the dance, refusing to acknowledge the murmurs from the crowd. The prince's hand was warm when it clasped hers, his steps powerful and exact. He clearly expected her to falter, watching her with barely concealed anticipation of failure. But as they turned and separated, came together and parted again, Jane felt forgotten muscle memory awaken. With each measure, she grew more confident. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget, the joy of moving to music, the satisfaction of perfect form. When the prince executed a complicated turn designed to throw her off balance, Jane responded with flawless precision, her skirt swirling around her ankles. A subtle shift occurred in the prince's expression, surprise replaced by curiosity, then something like genuine interest. His grip on her hand gentled, and when they came together for the promenade section, his other hand at her waist guided rather than controlled. The music swelled for the final figures. Jane was no longer aware of the watching crowd, lost in the rhythm and the unexpected harmony she had found with her partner. As they executed the last turn and came to the closing position, she was breathing quickly, a natural flush coloring her cheeks. For a breathless moment after the music ended, Prince Sebastian continued to hold her gaze, something unreadable in his amber eyes. Then the ballroom erupted in applause. Jane blinked, suddenly aware again of their audience. To her astonishment, the applause was not mocking but appreciative. Even Lady Harrington was nodding with approval. "You dance like a queen, not a maid," the prince murmured, quiet enough that only she could hear. Before Jane could respond, they were surrounded by admirers. Lord Ravenscroft was effusive in his praise, and several gentlemen Jane recognized from her previous life in society bowed to her with newfound respect. As the crowd began to disperse, Prince Sebastian kept her hand on his arm. "Walk with me," he said, his tone making it clear this was not a request. He led her toward the terrace doors. Jane hesitated at the threshold, keenly aware of impropriety. "Your Highness, I cannot, the terrace remains visible from the ballroom," he interrupted. "Your reputation is safe, Miss Fairchild. But I wish to speak with you privately." Once outside, the cool night air was a welcome relief after the warmth of the ballroom. The prince released her arm and studied her with new interest. "You deliberately concealed your skill," he stated. Jane lifted her chin. "You deliberately sought to embarrass me." To her surprise, he inclined his head in acknowledgement. "I did. It was poorly done." The admission startled her. "May I ask why?" He turned to gaze out over the darkened gardens. "I find English society tedious. The false smiles, the manipulative mammas, the simpering débutantes who claim interests they do not possess in hopes of capturing my attention." His mouth twisted. "When Lord Ravenscroft mentioned a gentlewoman serving as a maid, I thought to create a small diversion at your expense." "How fortunate for your Highness that entertainment was so readily available," Jane replied, unable to keep the edge from her voice. He turned back to her, and to her shock, a genuine smile transformed his austere features. "You continue to speak your mind. How refreshing. Necessity has stripped away many of society's pretensions for me, your Highness." Sebastian, he said abruptly. Jane blinked. I beg your pardon. My name. When we are speaking privately, I would prefer you use it. He stepped closer. Tell me, Miss Fairchild, how did a woman who dances like you come to be in your current position? Perhaps it was the unexpected intimacy of the moment, or perhaps simply the relief of speaking honestly to someone after weeks of careful deference, but Jane found herself explaining her father's gambling, his death, and her family's circumstances. My mother and sisters rely on what I send home, she concluded. Lady Harrington has been most generous, but I am fortunate to have found any respectable position. Sebastian listened with unexpected attention. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment before speaking. In Xanthia, we have a saying, the eagle may perch on a fence post, but it remains an eagle. His gaze was intent. You may wear a maid's dress, Miss Fairchild, but you revealed your true nature on that dance floor tonight. The terrace doors opened, and Lady Harrington appeared, her expression concerned. Miss Fairchild, you are needed. Jane curtsied quickly to the prince. Thank you for the dance, Your Highness. As she turned to go, his voice stopped her. I shall call on Lady Harrington tomorrow. I believe we have more to discuss. Lady Harrington's eyebrows rose, but she merely nodded and escorted Jane away. In the carriage ride home, Amelia was bursting with questions. How did you learn to dance like that? Why did the prince choose you? What did he say on the terrace? Lady Harrington silenced her with a look. Miss Fairchild performed admirably under difficult circumstances. Now, let us discuss this matter privately. Once Amelia had been sent to bed, Lady Harrington summoned Jane to her study. To Jane's surprise, she poured 2 glasses of sherry and handed one to Jane. Sit, she commanded. And explain what transpired with Prince Sebastian. Jane recounted the evening's events faithfully. When she mentioned the prince's intention to call the next day, Lady Harrington's lips tightened. I suspected as much, she murmured. You realize, of course, that his interest is most irregular. Jane nodded. I assure you, my lady, I harbor no illusions about His Highness's motives. No doubt he finds me a novel distraction from the tedium of the season. Lady Harrington studied her over the rim of her glass. Perhaps. Or perhaps he recognizes quality where he finds it. She set down her sherry. Your background was not unknown to me when I hired you, Miss Fairchild. Your mother and I were acquainted in our youth. Jane's eyes widened. You never mentioned it was not relevant to your position. Lady Harrington sighed. However, tonight's display changes matters. The prince's attention will draw scrutiny, and your performance has already sparked gossip. I apologize if I have created difficulties, Lady Harrington waved away her concern. On the contrary, you comported yourself with dignity in a challenging situation. She fixed Jane with a penetrating stare. But now we must consider how to proceed. True to his word, Prince Sebastian called the following afternoon. Jane, having been instructed to make herself available, waited nervously in the small morning room while Lady Harrington received him in the drawing room. When she was finally summoned, Jane found not only the Prince and Lady Harrington but also Lord Ravenscroft and another distinguished gentleman she didn't recognize. Miss Fairchild, Lady Harrington said formally, His Highness has made an unusual request. Lord Ravenscroft and Baron Tewkesbury are here as witnesses. Jane curtsied, her pulse quickening. Your Highness? Sebastian stepped forward, his expression serious. Miss Fairchild, I wish to engage your services for the remainder of the season. Jane's confusion must have shown, for he continued, not as a maid. As my cultural advisor. I don't understand, Jane admitted. It is simple, Sebastian explained. I find English society bewildering. Its unwritten rules, its complex hierarchies, its hidden meanings. I require someone who understands these intricacies but will speak plainly to me. His lips quirked. Someone not dazzled by my title or seeking advancement through connection to me. Lord Ravenscroft cleared his throat. His Highness has proposed a most generous arrangement. You would reside with Lady Harrington as a paid companion, with a substantial stipend, and accompany the Prince to selected social events. Your reputation would be protected by Lady Harrington's chaperonage and the official nature of your position, Baron Tewkesbury added. A contract has been drawn up outlining your duties and compensation. Jane's mind whirled. This was so unexpected, so extraordinary, that she hardly knew how to respond. This is most unusual, she finally managed. Indeed, Sebastian agreed. But so were the circumstances of our meeting. His expression softened slightly. You have knowledge I require and qualities I admire. I offer fair compensation for both. Lady Harrington intervened. Miss Fairchild will need time to consider this proposal. Perhaps we might reconvene tomorrow? The men agreed, and after they departed, Jane sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Well, Lady Harrington said dryly, it appears you have made quite an impression on His Highness. This cannot be proper, Jane murmured. What would society say? Society will say whatever it pleases, regardless of truth or propriety. Lady Harrington sat beside her. The question is whether you wish to accept his offer. Jane looked up. What of Lady Amelia? I have responsibilities to her. Easily resolved. My sister arrives next week and will bring her personal maid. Lady Harrington's expression softened. The position the Prince offers would provide security for your family beyond what you could earn as a lady's maid. But to advise a prince? I have no qualifications for such a role. On the contrary. You understand both worlds, privilege and service. You observe keenly and speak honestly. Lady Harrington paused. And if I am not mistaken, His Highness sees in you something beyond your practical value. Jane felt her cheeks warm. Surely not. Time will tell. Lady Harrington rose. Consider his offer. We shall provide your answer tomorrow. That evening, as Jane helped Amelia prepare for a small dinner party, her charge was uncharacteristically subdued. I heard about the Prince's proposal, Amelia finally said as Jane arranged her hair. Aunt explained everything. I haven't yet decided whether to accept, Jane replied. Amelia met her eyes in the mirror. You must. It's a wonderful opportunity. She smiled wistfully. Besides, you clearly captured his interest in a way I never could. His Highness merely requires practical assistance, Jane protested. Amelia's laugh held no bitterness. Oh, Jane! For someone so observant, you can be remarkably blind. I saw his face when you danced. She squeezed Jane's hand. Accept his offer. I shall miss your help, but I shan't forgive myself if you decline on my account. After a night of restless consideration, Jane made her decision. When Prince Sebastian returned the following afternoon, she accepted his proposal with one condition, that she be allowed to continue residing with Lady Harrington rather than moving to his household. A sensible precaution, he agreed readily. You will attend selected events with me, beginning with the Derbyshire musicale tomorrow evening. And so began the strangest period of Jane's life. By day, she continued many of her duties with Lady Amelia. By evening, she would don one of the new gowns procured for her new position and accompany the Prince to various gatherings. Their arrangement quickly became the talk of the ton. Some whispered of impropriety, but Sebastian's insistence on proper chaperonage and the formal nature of their association silenced the worst of the gossip. At each event, Jane would quietly explain the backgrounds of key attendees, advise on appropriate conversation topics, and translate the subtle social signals that mystified the Prince. In return, he treated her with increasing respect, listening attentively to her observations and often seeking her opinion on matters beyond her stated duties. Lady Pembroke's excessive compliments about your country suggest she hopes you'll invite her son to visit Xanthia, Jane murmured one evening at a literary salon. Sebastian's lips twitched. And should I accommodate her? Only if you wish to field hints about her daughter's affinity for foreign cultures at every subsequent meeting, Jane replied. His low chuckle warned her more than it should have. Over the weeks, she had discovered that beneath his austere exterior lay a sharp intelligence and surprising wit. Their conversations ranged from political philosophy to literature, and she found herself looking forward to their evenings together with an eagerness that both thrilled and alarmed her. For his part, Sebastian seemed to relax in her company. The cold mask he presented to society would soften when they spoke privately, and he began to share stories of his homeland and childhood that revealed a man far more complex than his public persona suggested. It was during the midsummer ball at Vauxhall Gardens that everything changed. They had stepped away from the crowded pavilion to admire the illuminated walkways. Lady Harrington had granted them a few minutes of privacy, remaining within sight but beyond earshot. "You've been unusually quiet tonight," Sebastian observed as they strolled beneath lantern-lit trees. Jane sighed. "Forgive me. I received a letter from home today. My youngest sister is ill, and while the doctor believes she will recover, my mother is struggling to manage." Sebastian frowned. "Why did you not mention this earlier? We could have declined tonight's invitation." "It wouldn't have changed Elizabeth's condition," Jane replied. "And you have obligations here. None that supersede your family's well-being." He stopped, turning to face her. "Jane, you must know that your concerns have become important to me." The use of her given name, spoken with such gentleness, made her breath catch. "Your Highness, Sebastian," he corrected softly. "We are well beyond formality, are we not?" She met his gaze, warm amber in the lantern light. "Sebastian, then. I appreciate your concern, but I'm managing well enough." "You always manage," he said, a note of admiration in his voice. "From the moment you stepped onto that dance floor, determined not to be humiliated, you have shown remarkable strength. Necessity is a stern teacher. As is pride." His hand rose to brush a stray curl from her cheek, the touch so light she might have imagined it. "I have been thinking about our arrangement." Jane's heart skipped. "Has it not been satisfactory?" "On the contrary. It has been enlightening in ways I never anticipated." Sebastian took a deep breath. "I came to England seeking a suitable match, a lady of impeccable breeding with sufficient dowry to benefit Xanthia's interests." Jane nodded, ignoring the hollow feeling in her chest. "Of course. Have you found promising candidates?" "I have found something else entirely." His voice dropped lower. "I have found a woman who speaks truth instead of flattery, who shows grace under pressure, who dances like a queen while dressed as a maid." Jane could scarcely breathe. "Sebastian, I am returning to Xanthia next month," he interrupted. "Court responsibilities require my presence." The hollow feeling expanded. "I see. Then our arrangement will conclude." "That depends," he said carefully, "on whether you would consider a new arrangement." Lady Harrington chose that moment to approach. "The fireworks display is about to begin," she announced. "We should return to our seats." The conversation remained unfinished as they rejoined the gathering. Throughout the display, Jane was acutely conscious of Sebastian beside her, his words echoing in her mind. A new arrangement? What could he possibly mean? The following morning, a messenger delivered a small package to Jane. Inside she found a delicate silver bracelet with a note in Sebastian's bold hand, "For your sister's care. Not a loan, a gift freely given. Please accept." She traced the fine craftsmanship with trembling fingers. The bracelet would fetch a price sufficient to provide the best medical care for Elizabeth and ease her mother's burdens considerably. Yet accepting such a gift felt dangerously close to impropriety. Lady Harrington, finding her staring at the bracelet, merely raised an eyebrow. "His Highness seems determined to assist your family." "I cannot accept this," Jane whispered. "It would create obligations I cannot fulfill." "Perhaps," Lady Harrington replied thoughtfully, "or perhaps it simply reveals the depth of his regard." She sat beside Jane. "The prince called earlier while you were assisting Amelia. He has requested your company for a private audience this afternoon, with me as chaperone, of course." Jane's pulse quickened. "Did he mention the purpose?" "He did not, but his manner suggested matters of significance." Lady Harrington studied her carefully. You care for him? It wasn't a question, and Jane saw no point in denial. More than is wise, given our circumstances. Circumstances can change, Lady Harrington said enigmatically. Be ready at 3. The prince received them in his private salon at the embassy, a room of understated elegance that reflected its occupants' refined taste. Sebastian rose as they entered, his expression more serious than usual. After exchanging pleasantries, he addressed Jane directly. Did you receive my gift? I did, Your Highness, and while I appreciate your generosity, you feel unable to accept, he finished for her. I anticipated as much. He glanced at Lady Harrington. Might I speak with Miss Fairchild privately? Within your sight, of course, but beyond hearing. Lady Harrington nodded and withdrew to the far end of the room. Sebastian gestured to a pair of chairs near the window. Once they were seated, he leaned forward, his expression earnest. Jane, I must speak plainly. These past weeks have altered my perceptions profoundly. His hands clasped hers. I came to England with precise requirements for a suitable match. None of which included falling in love with a lady's maid. Jane's heart stopped, then raced. Your Highness, Sebastian, he insisted. And please, let me finish before practical objections overwhelm sentiment. She nodded, speechless. You possess every quality I truly value: intelligence, courage, honesty, grace under pressure. Your circumstances are temporary, your character is not. His grip tightened. I return to Xanthia soon, and I wish you to accompany me. As your cultural advisor? Jane asked faintly. A smile touched his lips. As my wife. The world seemed to tilt. That's impossible. I have no dowry, no connections of value. Xanthia needs no dowry, Sebastian interrupted. And as for connections, I find I care far more for character than courtly advantages. He released one hand to reach into his coat, withdrawing a small velvet box. My mother's ring. She was also deemed unsuitable by some, yet my father never regretted his choice. He opened the box to reveal an exquisite sapphire surrounded by diamonds. Jane stared at it, then at him, certain she must be dreaming. This cannot be real, she whispered. It is entirely real. Sebastian's expression softened. I began with mockery and found admiration. Then respect. Then love. He took a deep breath. I do not expect an immediate answer. Consider carefully. Marriage to me means leaving England, adapting to court life, facing scrutiny from those who will question your suitability. Jane's mind whirled with implications. My family would be provided for, he assured her. Your mother and sisters could join us in Xanthia, or remain here with ample support. The scandal will be short-lived. Royal prerogative has its advantages. He smiled fully then, transforming his face. Besides, anyone who has seen you dance knows you were born for more than serving others. Jane looked across the room to where Lady Harrington waited, surprised to find a smile on the older woman's face. You knew, she realized suddenly. When you hired me, when you agreed to this arrangement, you anticipated something like this. Sebastian followed her gaze. Lady Harrington and my mother were schoolmates in their youth. When I mentioned my journey to England, my mother suggested I meet her old friend, and perhaps consider any young ladies under her guidance. I was never meant to remain a lady's maid, Jane murmured, understanding dawning. Lady Harrington recognized quality when she found it, Sebastian confirmed. Though I doubt even she anticipated quite this outcome. Jane turned back to him, studying the face that had become so dear to her. And if I refuse? His expression remained steady. Then I shall respect your decision, continue to ensure your family's well-being from afar, and regret for the rest of my days that I once mocked a woman who danced like a queen. In that moment, Jane knew her answer. The challenges ahead were daunting, the changes overwhelming, but the man before her had proven himself worthy of trust. Of love. I don't need to consider further, she said softly. My answer is yes. Sebastian's face transformed with joy. He slid the ring onto her finger, then raised her hand to his lips. "You have made me the happiest of men." Lady Harrington approached, beaming. "I take it congratulations are in order." "Indeed," Sebastian replied, not taking his eyes from Jane's face. "Miss Fairchild has consented to become Princess of Xanthia." "A far better title than lady's maid," Lady Harrington observed dryly. "Though I shall miss your services." Jane laughed, happiness bubbling up inside her. "Perhaps I might recommend a replacement? Someone who understands both worlds, as you once said." Later, Sebastian murmured, drawing her closer. "For now, I believe a celebratory dance is in order." Without an audience this time. As the three of them returned to Lady Harrington's home to share the news with an ecstatic Amelia, Jane reflected on the extraordinary journey from desperate gentlewoman to royal bride. The prince had ordered the maid to dance, intending mockery, but fate had orchestrated something far more powerful, a love that transcended station and circumstance, beginning with a dance that revealed her true nature. Not a maid at all, but a queen in waiting,